we'll be speaking to issues around toxic fuel imports in the country.
All right, thank you very much for that backgrounder. Now we have guests joining us for this conversation. Let's begin by introducing our guest, who is at our Lagos Network Center. He is Olumide Adeosun. Olumide Adeosun is Chairman, Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria, MOMAN. Mr. Adeosun, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Also with us for this conversation, we would like to welcome Engineer Abdul Audu. Engineer Audu is Chief Lecturer in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Kaduna Polytechnic in Kaduna. And also former Chairman of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Kaduna Branch. Claire?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, let's also welcome right here in the studio with us Ogbonna Okuku, and he's an investment and economic development expert and a familiar face on Good Morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes. On Daje Ijagu is Director, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. He also joins us right here in the studio. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
We have guests who are also joining us via Zoom. And let me introduce Professor Yinka Omorugbe. He's a professor of energy law and former secretary and legal advisor of the NNPC. Professor Omorugbe, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right, and Engineer Alex Ney, also MD CEO of Gamot Nigeria Limited. He's an ex-Chevron management staff, former African Regional Director of SPE International, and he has 44 years, he's an honorary member of SPE with over 44 years experience in the oil and gas industry. He joins us, of course, via Zoom to discuss this topic. Engineer Naim, thank you very much for finding time to be with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being around with you all.
All right. Once again, we welcome all our guests to this conversation. Let's begin by going to Lagos, and that's to be with Mr. Olumide Adeosun, Chairman of MOMAN, that's Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria. Mr. Adeosun, well, Nigeria is not importing petrol for the first time. Yes, we had one or two incidents, sometimes 10 years apart, of toxic fuel being imported into the country. What happened in this instance? Were we importing from Belgium for the first time, or those who were supposed to have taken a closer look at what was coming to us failed to do their job?
Thank you. So in terms of what actually happened, my belief is that the investigations are still going on. So any views I offer at this point will be part speculation and at best an educated guess. So let's walk through the scenario that would have played out. We have consortiums or individual importers that make up the DSDP importers list. There are other parties involved in it, and I think, as the authority had said, the Nigerian specification sheet is very clear, and it forms part of the legal document for importation. It does not typically contain absolutely all of the parameters that you would expect to find inside, and it certainly does not today list methanol as an item to be tested against. As again has been previously published, a few competent, proven industry surveyors and inspectors went out both in Antwerp or the other European locations where the products were tested, and the tests came out legally okay. The same thing happened on the Nigeria side, where the test checked out okay, because as per the legal document, there's no test for methanol. We all knew something was amiss when, well, two things happened. One, there was a slight discoloration to the product, but this happens as well. We now know that the discoloration is as a result of the methanol content that reacts to the water to create a methanol and water mix and a separate low contaminate mix, which together make up the sludge. So I guess in a nutshell, the reality of the matter is that this can happen. Adulterated fuel is a situation that occurs across the industry. In preparation for this session, I did some very light internet research just to look at the situation with fuels, and I found that actually aviation fuel is one of the largest fuel types where you get a lot of contamination. Now you can imagine how dangerous that is. So it's possible that this happened purely by chance, but I think if you look at the dynamics of the trading or commodities trading climate right now, you see that prices are moving up and down. And if you're a skeptic, you would say that because methanol is a lower cost additive, it's possible that somewhere along the chain, somebody who was interested in cost may have slightly increased the methanol count there. But as I say, this is purely speculation. The most important thing that's happening right now is the containment that's going on, as well as all of the remedial steps to clean up and to make sure that a clean supply of fuel is injected back into the supply chain, and removing the what your reporter called toxic, which we're just saying, which is the high methanol content fuels. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigerians also need to know what happened. Who is responsible? I mean, history is repeating itself. If you listened to our earlier introductions, we told you that similar incident happened times back. In other climes, heads would have been rolling by now. Someone would have resigned. So I don't know. Maybe you may need to speculate a little further. Is this an accident? Is it negligence? Or is it a kind of sabotage, given that, of course, certain things have happened, matters have, happened within the downstream sector within the past couple of months?
Oh, wow. I think at this stage to go as far as sabotage is something that I would not be willing to contemplate. But it's really just a matter of looking at the participants. The people think trading is, or commodities trading is buying and selling. It's part blending, a large part of blending, part logistics, part commercial, and it's the mix of everything that comes together to create the pricing or the economic situation that we see around PMS or any other commodity for that matter. So I mean, I think we're more likely to see that this is a commercial decision, an ill-judged commercial decision that somebody somewhere has taken, either in collusion with or without some of the importers. So I think I genuinely think that it's important to let the investigation play out rather than arrive at a point where we are blaming at this point. I have certainty. I have seen the depth of proficiency and rigor in the leadership, and not just at the NNPC, the authority, and all those places. And it's clear to me that a rigorous investigation will be done. I think at this stage, what we as Nigerians should be, what we as the industry at least are focused on, is ensuring that we are dealing with the restock of products back in the supply chain, remediation of the dirty fuel, and reconciliation to make sure that costs associated with the cleanup are placed where they belong. Nobody who's driving a car should have to pay to have their car fixed. I'm also the CEO of Adova PLC, and as a company, I know how many cars we have fixed. I know how many fuel pumps we've had to replace since this incident happened, and I have just as large an appetite for the truth as every Nigerian here. But my steer and my position is that I would like to see the investigation be thorough and reach a clear and well thought out conclusion rather than whatever we speculate it to be. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Adeosun, thank you very much there. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Now let's bring in Engineer Alex Ney. My colleague earlier introduced him. He's with us via Zoom. He has over 40 years experience in the oil industry. Engineer Ney, just lead us into the science, or more specifically, the chemistry of petrol, otherwise known as premium motor spirit, or PMS for short. Now, if you like, the pedestrian view would be that PMS is one of the many derivatives of crude oil. And now we are hearing about additives such as methanol or ethanol. So why would there be a consideration of adding methanol to PMS, which is distilled from crude oil? And by the way, I used to hear about, is that ethanol or methanol derived from sugarcane or something? So give us, a background into the science of all of this.
Well, I think the last speaker made a lot of statements that need to be looked into. He mentioned, for now, let's leave the whole thing for the investigation to continue. There's nothing to investigate here. When a fuel is contaminated, it's contaminated. So there's no two ways about it. Now, when you add ethanol to it, it's economic or business decision, And when we are talking about this situation, where is the government in this situation? The government have nominated inspectors to check these things before they leave their base. And also, when they get to base where you're going to take it in, they're supposed to go through the process. We'll be using fuel in this country. So all this talk about there are certain things not being well stated or whatever, I'm not impressed with that. We've gone a long way in this industry, that we should know when we have a bad fuel from the source. You have paid inspectors. They have a specification and everything defined. Even in the US as of today, if you have any fuel that has more than 10% ethanol, it cannot arrive any pump station. It won't get to any pump station. So why should that happen here? So I'm a little bit confused with the whole thing, because there are mechanisms in place to ensure that these things don't happen. Ethanol is ethanol, but in most cases, in some other uncivilized places, they could do all that, to maximize profit and do all kinds of things. But it shouldn't have happened here in Nigeria after all these donkey years of being in this business. That's the shock I have. And there's no excuse for this to have happened. So normally, things like this in a civilized environment, the individuals or people involved should have been kept one side now to see what will happen, because this is a mess and it doesn't portray us as a nation that is technically advanced to the level we think we are. I think that's my main concern. There is no reason whatsoever why this should happen. It's just a failure on the side of the people doing the inspection and a failure of the people also at the receiving end, because both ends, there are standards. So it's left to the government and those involved to tell us as Nigerians, where did this slip come from? Who slept for this to happen? Those people should be brought out and necessary actions should be taken. I don't think we have too much. There is some question on say investigation. NNPC needs to explain to Nigerians how such a slip can happen in the system, and whoever the people buying it and bringing it to Nigerians are, they should tell Nigerians why they have to do this to Nigeria as a country. I think that's my view about it. It's very, very simple situation. There's no big investigation or this is clear. And it's shameful. maybe I give other people a chance to talk because I'm really, really, really pissed off with this type of thing. It's not supposed to happen at this level of this country with the level of knowledge and technology we all have. It's a shame.
Engineer name. Kingsley asked why, the need for the addition of ethanol and methanol. Why are we adding it? Why do we even have to add it to the distilled fuel that we're importing?
Well, the thing is, we are blessed here. This country, we don't produce fuel with sulfur. We have the best grade of fuel, and we are giving it out from the little we know. Sometimes the NNPC send crude to refineries outside to refine, and they come back with products. So when you add ethanol, you contaminate it, and the price for such fuel is normally less. So that's why I said, I don't know why they have to do this. If you have a base level and you go and contaminate it with ethanol, what you're doing is you're trying to bring the quality down, which means the price you're buying it will be low, while you want to sell it at the premium price. These are possibilities. That's why I'm still very, very upset. There's no business, there's no reason why this should have happened. Because for the newer cars, 10% ethanol, they put or whatever. But for our own case, we've gone a long way. So this shouldn't happen at all. It's just like the first man said, it's a business decision and economics and this, that, and all that. But the bottom line, this is fraudulent as far as I'm concerned. And
Thank
people
you.
should be held responsible.
All right, thank you, Engineer Nenye. Let's come back to our studios. Engineer Abdul Audu, who is a chief lecturer in the School of Engineering at Kaduna Polytechnic in Kaduna. Engineer Audu, well, we'll listen to Engineer Nenye, but I'm sure that some clarification is still required. In his closing sentences, he talked about Nigeria's crude oil being of low sulfur content. So, if PMS, that is petrol, is distilled from crude oil, why are we looking around for methanol or ethanol to add to it? What is ethanol and what is methanol? And I said earlier that I've heard, and I also read sometime in the past that you can get either methanol or ethanol, is it from sugarcane or otherwise? So just tell us the science of this and what impact it has on the efficiency of automobile engines.
Thank you very much. First of all, there are two major different types of fuel and petroleum. That is crude oil in the world. There's the heavily leaded fuel and the light crude. Heavily leaded crude and light crude. The Nigerian product, the Nigerian crude, is the light crude. That is what when you hear Bonny Light. And then there is the sweet London crude, which is also light like our own. So the price is usually higher. For the temperate regions, the countries that have cold weather and the rest that do not permit high, what we call pour point in oil, in fuel, they like using ours. For the tropics like ours, we like using heavily leaded fuel. That is the Venezuelan crude, the type, or the Saudi Arabian crude that comes into Nigeria. So you discover that the Kaduna, for example, the Kaduna refinery and petrochemical plant was designed to refine heavy crude. Whereas the Warri refinery, which is in the south, where the weather is more humid, is designed to refine light crude. And the heavy crude the heavily leaded fuel is more suitable for the northern region, where you have hot weather. where if you put the fuel, the gasoline, it evaporates. The America also used to depend so much on the heavy leaded fuel, and they needed to tow down the sulfur, that is the lead now in it and the rest, to tone it down by adding ethanol. An addition of ethanol as permitted in the United States and other such area climes is 15% maximum at the moment. And in other countries, there are researches into the switch from gasoline or petroleum-based fuels to ethanol-based fuels. It is true that you can get ethanol from sugar cane and even cassava and other plants, but you also get ethanol from the petroleum product, that the petroleum crude oil that you know. So if you go to any refinery in Nigeria, as much as there are, the refineries are divided into units. So if you have a refinery and petrochemical complex like you have in Kaduna or Warri and the rest, you have ethanol plants there. It produces ethanol from the product. So the pure fuel, like everything pure, for example, you say pure gold is costlier. So sometimes...
But pure water is not costly.
So they bring down they do an addition to do a blending. Now, what is bad in the addition of ethanol to our gasoline is that it has very debilitating effects on the engine parts. It reduces the combustion power, will I say, the combustibility of the petrol. It introduces more water into the fuel system, and water is heavier than the oil. It settles down in your tank, and the ethanol too will help in washing off the scales that must have accumulated in the tank for long. It passes through your engine system, and at the end of the day, it leads to rust, the corrosion of the engine parts, like the carburetors, the fuel lines, and the rest. It also dissolves the plastic components in the engine. There are some plastic components, rubbers are there, the normal plastics are there. It dissolves them. Remember, when you want to clean something off, let's say paint off, you use spirits. Those are ethanol-based products to clean off. So it cleans off, but the dirt all settles in your system, and it is pumped. So fuel pumps will be the first casualty. And when you introduce a new fuel pump, it still brings in more of the contaminants into your engine. The cold starting will become more difficult. There will be more violent combustion inside the engine because ethanol, to its own rate of combustion, is different from that. So if you add more of it than required to the fuel, it will certainly bring a lot of damages to the engine. And that is why you had that those who have already taken the petrol, now what we call petrol, into their vehicles already have problems with their engines. Yes. So many engines will have to be replaced. Because what we call knock, in our own parlance, is that the engine must have failed. And that is either the crankshaft or the piston, the connecting rod and the rest inside the engine will have already gone by because of the violent nature of the combustion that takes place inside the engine. So the stoichiometric, what we in engineering call stoichiometric air fuel ratio, that leads to the combustion, will be different from what you ordinarily supposed to have. Other clients have also started designing engines purely based on ethanol to adjust to that, but we are not doing that. We have purely petrol engines in Nigeria. So there is basically no need for anybody to start thinking of even blending in the first place, as far as we are concerned in Nigeria. Okay,
so we are told that I don't know how many liters have been withdrawn now, whether it's 180,000 or 80, I don't know how many have been withdrawn now. But what is the magnitude of the problem that we are facing as a result of what has happened?
The magnitude is massive. It's dangerous because it can lead to fire. It can lead to so many things. But the major part is economical, and then the national image of Nigeria. What I read and heard to listen to on the news was that the tanker that brought in the liner that brought in the fuel was identified and was directed to be isolated, only for the product to somehow get into the system. So, and I will say that is the Nigerian in us. The Nigerian in us, that the other side of the Nigerian in us.
It's not in me. No.
When I say us, that it's not in me, but
yes.
when it's in somebody and it's in Nigerian, it's already affecting all of us.
Well,
So
I think these are the issues that we are interrogating.
Yes.
And let's bring in Professor Yinka Omorogbe. She's still there with us. She's joining us via Zoom, Professor of Energy Law and former Secretary and Legal Advisor of the NNPC. She was our guest on Good Morning Nigeria sometime last week, I believe. Professor Yinka Omorogbe, now some are saying that the incident of the off-spec fuel imports or toxic fuel imports may very well be the first major test of the implementation or workability of the PIA, that's the Petroleum Industry Act. Now you have the parties clearly delineated, and from what the experts are saying and are still saying, somebody must have dropped the ball and the ball kept dropping and probably the ball is broken. What are your thoughts, Prof?
Well, thank you. I sort of agree with you, because when this whole thing occurred, I said to myself, that it's really excellent that we now have a Petroleum Industry Act, because what we do have are regulators with actual power that exist now. We had before the DPR, which was really completely toothless because it did not have any legislation backing it. It was essentially had been relegated to being a department in a ministry without real authority. Now we have the Petroleum Industry Act, and we have two regulators that have power. The regulator in this instance is the authority, the midstream and downstream authority, and as you can see, they're already taking charge. The authority chief executive has come out to talk, because they're aware of their different responsibilities. NNPC as well has come out to talk. We've actually had far more discussion in the last, few days than we would have had in the previous times. So I think that it's a test, but so far everybody is actually coming out good. We also need to remember that when you have a regulator with teeth, they can actually do things. The regulator can investigate, has an investigation unit. It can punish, and the punishment can be from revocation to different charges depending on what has been done. So by itself, it can actually take total control. So we're really fortunate that the PIB, the Petroleum Industry Act, is actually in force.
Well, Prof, we don't just want to get in yet. We'll speak to the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, but there are legal implications other than for those who are working in the value chain for the supply of these contaminated products. Some persons have talked about negligence, which is tortious.
Yeah, they're definitely legal implications. There are definitely offenses, but I am not the investigation unit. I don't know what has been done. I do know that what has been called a business decision is a very nice way of saying that, of characterizing an act that is at the very least unethical, but more likely illegal and fraudulent, as again some other people have said. So I think that the investigations should actually, there are certain things you cannot say until there are certain facts that are made plain.
All right, Prof, we'll keep you on hold for a moment and return to you much later. Let's bring in the guest right here in our studio. Ukuku, you are in investment. I'm sure you would like to look at this issue from the investment perspectives. Though Ade Osun doesn't want us to speculate, but that's the only platform we have, since the critical players are not willing to tell us what has happened. I mean, something must have happened. Is this a kind of investment? Kind of manipulation somehow?
Okay, now let me. I would like to take this entire conversation to through another prism. Now, first things first, we need to look at two things. Why would a regulator be the one awarding contracts? Put that on hold. Number two, why in the DSDP agreement it stipulates that the contract is between the NNPC and there must be a refinery. Now, where is the refinery? When you have in-tank blending facilities in Antwerp, in Rotterdam, and in Amsterdam, simply means you're dealing with traders. We can't leave a very sensitive part of our economy in the hands of traders. Now, someone, somewhere, and let me say clearly, NNPC clearly overlooked a major part of that contract, which is there must be a refinery. Direct supply, direct, this is a very simple thing. So there's no, Mr. President, as the NNPC, as the petroleum minister, should not listen to anything. It's very clear. Why did you circumvent that agreement? Because you must have a refinery. So nobody's mentioned any refinery here. And it's a major part of that contract. So it simply means that NNPC clearly did discretionary award of contracts, which is in itself is wrong. Now, NNPC, it also shows that NNPC does not have the capacity to carry out what the law has given, the law has given them the capacity to do. There must be a world-class organization in between NNPC and these people these marketers. Because if inspectors are involved here, who would have inspected this product there in Antwerp, and then they inspected here, and then all these things were flagged, and then this product found its way into Nigeria.
Let me read out something to you from the
Yes, go ahead.
nation. It says, cargo quality certificate issued at load port by Anspec, Belgium, indicates that gasoline complied with Nigeria's specification.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Before we even go there, I'm still asking, is there a refinery in Antwerp? There's none. So why are we even having the conversation in the first place? So the NNPC or whoever is involved should just come out and even resign. There should be major based on that agreement. I am not going outside the agreement. It's the agreement they have with marketers. There must be a technical partner who must be a refinery. So you take crude from Nigeria. So you actually take crude from Nigeria, sell it in the open market, and then go to a trader, which is against the regulation. So there's something wrong here. So the conversation we're having doesn't even hold water.
Clear for us this
Yeah, well,
yes.
Okuku, thanks. Well, thanks for the comment you've made, but NNPC is not here as part of the conversation to immediately respond to what you are saying. Yeah. But the GMD of NNPC Limited has said a few things in the course of addressing the media. One, he did say that Duke Oil, which is a subsidiary of NNPC, was one of the importers, and he named the other importers. MRS had earlier issued a press statement, an advertorial, denying that it wasn't among the importers. Now, the GMD says, look, you are one of the importers. But he also said, that's to say the GMD, that they usually test before export from overseas, but that they don't test for methanol. It's not been a practice. Now, you are looking at purely the trading perspective. You're asking whether, for instance, there is a refinery in Antwerp. Now, Antwerp is in Belgium. Must there be a refinery in Antwerp itself? Antwerp is a seaport. And if you have, as we have Kaduna Refinery in Nigeria, which is inland, you can't have ships coming to Kaduna, they will have to be by pipe. So maybe, I don't know. I'm just
That's
saying.
why I said
Yeah,
you
so
should
you
explain
clarify
further.
that.
My
yes.
point is,
That's
okay,
why I said
let
you
me
should
explain.
explain
My
further,
point
so that
is
we have
very
an
simple.
understanding.
My
Yes.
point is very simple. The agreement, the DSDP agreement, stipulates that every marketer must be attached to a refinery because you are taking crude from Nigeria to go and refine. So are you refining it in a blending facility, in-tank blending facility? So that is where the problem is. That's where I'm heading at. So there has to be a refinery. So where is the refinery? So in the entire conversation, we're discussing Antwerp, and I'm asking myself, these are in-tank blending plants owned by traders, not investors in refineries.
Blending plants.
Yeah, they are all like
Not
blending.
refineries.
No, they are not refineries.
In the process of blending, something
Something can
be
happen.
produced,
Okay,
yes.
So that's what I'm saying. The compliance, we have to be compliant. You know, the contract and compliance aspect of it.
It could be that, sorry, it could be that somebody was given a quantity to bring in, okay, and he took less, because if you add ethanol, the cost will definitely reduce. So you can now take half of the quantity and add ethanol to
beef it up. But Mr. Adeosun earlier talked about, he just said speculatively.
Yes.
Mr. Adeosun wasn't emphatic. He did say that, look, this is all in the realm of speculation or educated guesses, that it could have been a business decision because of the fluctuation in oil prices.
Exactly.
Ondaje Ijago, Director, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. You've listened to all our guests and what they've been saying. Tell us what the attitude of the Commission is to all of this. Have you received complaints from persons who are impacted, end users of the refined products, or even the petrol stations that have sold the contaminated off-spec petrol?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say that my proper designation is Deputy Director with the FCCPC, that's the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. It is good that we're talking about this, and it's just that we are concerned too that everything weighs heavily on the technical side. The person who bears the biggest brunt in all of this that we're talking about is the consumer. The average person who is affected, and like I say, bears the biggest brunt. And the consumer is affected in numerous ways, one of which is the fact that there's a scarcity of product right now because of the recall. And the man who bears that brunt, like I said, is the consumer. Transport fares have increased. People are queuing up day and night at filling stations and all of that. We are concerned about this. Another thing is the issue of damage to property and vehicles and all of that, the economic losses consumers would have to encounter, and they already encounter. So yes, talking about whether we have received complaints or not, yes, we have received complaints. We're actually inundated, but outside of that, we also have gone out on our own to engage regulators who are involved in all of this. And our engagement is in different folds. First, we're looking at the issue of one, the consumer has suffered, like I said, some economic losses and also damage to property and vehicles. We're looking at the remedial action that will be taken to ensure that these consumers are compensated. That is one area we're looking at. The other area we're looking at is to ensure that this scarcity does not persist, so consumers don't suffer unduly. We're also looking at the issue of consequence management, because in all of this, whatever is most important to us today is that this does not reoccur. And if we do not manage the consequence properly, we're going to have a reoccurrence of this incident. And consequence management, like you know, is the best modifier of human behavior. So for us at the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, we are looking at the sanctions that would be applied, and for us, it should be to the last letter of the law. We are engaging the regulators with respect to that. But the bigger issue is the marketplace and the losses people have suffered. Compensation is a big issue in Nigeria. We are also concerned. In fact, as we speak, yesterday we had what was supposed to be like a situation room, and all our executives and some top management staff were there. And we're actually cracking our heads and coming around with a purpose-built redress mechanism for this. Reason is that this seems to fall almost outside the realm of the normal thing that we know. So we're working hard to ensure that by maybe latest today, we will make some pronouncements on the way and manner consumers could seek compensation for this. And as far as we're concerned, it will be thorough, it will be transparent, and everything will be done to the satisfaction of all. That is what we're looking. So a number of things are coming into this. But in also looking at also the consequence part of it, I also like to say that consumers should also learn a lesson from this. The reason is that every market has its own imperfections, and the Nigerian market is not an exception. One of the imperfections in our society is the fact that consumers scarcely take receipts for their purchases.
That's right.
And that is one headache that we are trying to actually eliminate from all of this. So because, one, we have a system where our mode of payment is essentially cash. It's not like some advanced countries where majority of people pay with their cards. So to prove that, okay, look, I am affected and I bought my product from this filling station is a big problem. So these are some of the very big matters we're looking at. So we're trying to ensure that this is mitigated to the barest minimum.
You know, Ijago, thanks a lot for that point. You will have to, we'll come back to you to emphasize it. A couple of days ago, Claire, while we were just discussing this issue in our newspaper review segment, I did point out that my car had, some jerking issues arising from this. Started at the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. When you buy the petrol, I know the 3 stations from where I bought petrol over some period of days. Yes, 2 of them, of course, I had the printout for the debit card. But how many Nigerians normally will request for even the debit card a receipt? They just, once they give it to you, you take it, squeeze it, and you discard it. And if you are going to make a claim, there must be evidence that proof that you did that.
Honestly,
yes.
I was going to ask before he just said it, that this is an unusual situation, and, modalities for compensation would be very, very complex indeed. But I don't know if your commission already has that. You've given us some idea. But let's put that on hold and return to Adeosun, who is, of course, joining us from our Lagos studio. Mr. Jones, you listened to Mr. Okuku talk about, the nexus between the contract and, of course, the implementation and execution of the contract. You want to respond to that? Is there a gap in that, and by implication has resulted in what has happened?
Thank you. Was Mr. Okuku the gentleman from the FCCPC? Or
Investment expert, yes. Expert.
So I'm sure our director can highlight Okuku. Okuku spoke, if you see Okuku on the screen, of course, you will recognize him. That's right, that's Ogbona Okuku. And Ijago from the Consumer Protection Commission spoke last, talking about compensation issues and all of that matters. But it has to do with the marketing contract or procurement contract that Mr. Okuku spoke about.
Yes, so look, he has a valid point, but there at the end of the day, so he was talking about the refinery. The DSDP program is not an initiative that we're involved in as a company, and it's not a primary initiative for my association. However, it is very clear that if you have a legal document and a specification forms part of that legal document, albeit the commercial aspect of it, and if you're looking at the specification sheet for a product where as much as a decimal point or 2 on a density, for instance, can result in monetization of about anywhere between $5 to $10 or even more, it's absolutely important that every line of specification that's important to us as a country is called out and specified. Now, what happened post-2008 when we had the ethanol, which, by the way, is also a legitimate blend, as the gentleman who spoke after me earlier mentioned. So we have specifications, and we don't have specifications that address methanol. That's a gap. And that gap is clearly what has been exploited and has led to the situation we're in today. Where I am in terms of all of this is that, yes, the gaps need to be tightened. That has to be one of the steps in closing out this issue. Somebody talked about consequence management. Absolutely a critical part of what is happening here. But as the chairman of the Marketers Association and as a deliverer and supplier of goods and services, quality goods and services in Nigeria, my focus, our priority as an association today is in making sure that we are a key part of the supply solution that needs to happen. Clean product needs to come into the country. We're also part of the reconciliation process. As someone has said, I mean, our members are considering how far to go with this. We have lost a vast amount of revenue. We have dealt with a lot of customer complaints. We have had downtime at depots. So, like everybody else here, I don't want to give you the impression that we are not riled by this, but at the end of the day, we need to remain calm. We need to make sure that we are out of the woods as far as this current issue goes. Absolutely critical, because at the end of the day, we still have queues on the streets. We have queues on the streets, and that's why we're having this conversation here today. So there's a clear gap. That gap has been exploited. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. We need to make sure that we don't fall prey to that and any other loopholes that might be exploited in any future specification sheet that we come out. It's a dangerous market out there. Traders, international traders have the reputation they have because they've earned it. So in dealing with them, it's absolutely important that we do our very best to be the smartest people in the room when we're dealing with them. And that requires broader consultation and making sure that the people who participate in these programs are people who have the international experience, the trading capabilities, the refineries like the gentleman mentioned, and a few other core capabilities, not just anybody who can apply for something. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Adeosun, I still would like to stay with you. I don't know whether this is, well, it's both commercial and technical. Well, the cargoes have come in. They arrived in tanks, and then, of course, they got transported to the various filling stations. Dispensing pumps have been damaged, and so on and so forth, according to reports. What is the decontamination process? Those cargoes that have not been offloaded or discharged, or the ones that have been discharged, how do you recall them, and how do you clean up your tanks? Who bears the cost of all this? What is this risk that you might still have traces in the value chain or supply chain of this toxic product?
Thank you very much for that question, and I think it's sort of an area that I think we all need to be alive to. There are technical aspects to it, and the regulator with the technical teams are best placed to do that. But there are different layers of storage that we need to consider. We have the vessels. It's very likely that the vessel has completely decanted its product into a tank, and it has therefore moved the chain of contamination into the tank. In the tank, what needs to be done at a conceptual level is mildly straightforward. The product has separated, the sludge has separated from the petrol. You wait for it to settle, and you separate that product, the bad product, and then you reblend what has been certified as clean product in a prescribed proportion, and you blend to the point where you can retest, and you look at the methanol content in it again. When the methanol content is okay, then you are now able to move that through the chain or through the value chain. But you must also make sure that the next level of storage, so in this case, the petrol, the underground tanks at petrol stations that are contaminated are also, one, segregated. That step has been done. The DPR has gone to great lengths to tell us about that. So that's been done. The NMDPRA. So we know what ratios we need to do. We have segregated products already. And so the challenge is how to do this at scale. There is sufficient PMS in the country, as we are told, to hold us. So there's no need to panic. But at the same time, we must recognize that we will need clean underground tank capacity. So that's a key ingredient in making sure that we're blending these things through. Now, for vessels that are coming in, it's not a one-size-fits-all response, right? We have these vessels. They may contain the less than 0.2% methanol that we are saying is actually acceptable or is okay. We'll let the new specification sheet tell us that. But if the content is low enough or it's recertified, then we have no problem. It goes into a clean tank, and we just need to make sure that we continue to segregate the contaminated products, or the tanks that have held the contaminated products, and they're sufficiently drained at the end of the day to make sure that when we put clean product into it again, the supply chain is clean. But I tell you, the biggest risk that we face right now is just making sure that we are pre-testing the next set of cargoes that are at sea, and to make sure that their content is fit for purpose. Otherwise, we will have this.
The process you have described is quite amazing. I mean, it's frightening, and I know it's not going to be an easy task to do. But my question is, at what cost, and who bears the cost?
Question. We, as marketers, are certainly not in a position to bear the costs. Like the end consumers, we have really spent a lot of time, a lot of effort managing that end of it. Ultimately, what the customer sees is the marketer, and that's their interface. So we spent a great deal of money, just dealing on a first response basis with our customers. We've also had to deal with the PMS in tank, the contamination, the segregation. That takes a lot of effort. We've had the losses that are associated with the loss of revenue from the delays and from not being able to load. We've had several tankers that have been turned around. Members have had tankers that have had to go back because the host tank was found to be contaminated. So there are a lot of associated costs that are being quantified. The bad products will need to be disposed of in a safe way. That comes at cost. So all these costs are being held. And the idea is that my members, at the appropriate moment, and when we have all the right information, we will put these claims to our supplier. And we will expect that there is remediation, which is another key step in this cleanup process, that there is remediation, and that we and our end customers are compensated for the losses associated with this incident.
All right, Mr. Olumide Adeosun, Chairman of MOMA, that's Major Oil Marketers Association. We really appreciate your contribution to this conversation. We know that it will be an ongoing conversation. It isn't just a case of everyone, as we had in the past, licking their wounds. I did say that we had an incident of foul fuel sometime in 1998. Mechanics died in the Lagos area. My car engine had issues, and several other persons. We all paid our cost. And today we're having this after the 2008 incident. So better enlightenment, greater enlightenment, and perhaps hopefully also better consequence management. We understand you have some other engagements, and we appreciate you being our guests on the program this morning. Thank you. All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with our other guests.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
this is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
We've been trying our best to contain the situation, and in our operations we've been able to make a lot of recoveries. We've been able to also arrest suspects that are involved in this kind of activities, and we've been able to also recover particularly arms and ammunition from those who are carrying it unlawfully and disturbing the peace of the people. But generally, our morale in the Nigerian police is always guided by our commitment to do what we have sworn to do. Peace and security must be looked into as a priority by all. To look at security as the business of all of us.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. As we have indicated, this is a very interesting conversation. We are talking about automobiles. I'm sure that those who have generators, petrol power generators, including the better past my neighbor, we do hope they are not having their own tales of woes at this moment. Engineer Alex Neye, let's return to you in this conversation. As the saying goes, the harm has been done. And the recourse always will be, oh, if we had our refineries functioning, then we wouldn't have this problem. What is the big deal with getting our refineries to work? Nigerian engineers have handled our refineries in the past, and they have worked at certain installed capacity. I mean, the NNPC gives its statement, its business accounts, and it tells us how much is being spent on non-functional refineries just to keep the staff there. Is it that we don't have a crop of engineers who can fix our refineries locally, even at some minimal percentage to get them going instead of awarding contracts, big contracts?
Well, I think as regards the refinery, as a young engineer coming out of the university, within few months, they had a strike in Bay City Gulf Refinery. It just took about a week training for young engineers who went in there around the place. There's no big deal with it. It's just our culture, our maintenance culture is a problem. And the way it works does not give room for government to do such business, because the way it goes, if it's a business, it's a business. And we want to draw the line between the business and a charity setting. You cannot set up a refinery just a few years ago. By today, not one of them is producing. So what is that telling us? It means we don't have the culture of running a refinery. We can't have 4 refineries or 3, all of them down. It's an eyesore, and it's a disgrace to most engineers in this country and outside this country. We have the best brains to do things, but because of the way we organize, that's the problem. And what has happened now as regards this contaminated fuel is exactly what the system in the country allows, and it's business as usual. You cannot run a refinery with that attitude, and that's why we have about 3-4 refineries, all of them down for the past 3 years. Go and check. You will find that they are still spending about maybe 10 billion naira every month, saying they are repairing, paying staff and all that. Where in the world do you have such a thing, except here? We have to wake up really and think. And the simple reason is because we are putting square pegs in square holes. And the way we operate, we are not disciplined enough to draw what the line is. It's a business. So I still feel we can do it, but with the way things are, if you even set it up today and we do things the way we've been doing, we're still not going to make it. So it is very obvious that based on the way we are structured in the country, we cannot run a refinery. It doesn't mean we don't have technical people to run the refinery. There are people. We're all there. There are a lot of young people who are ready to be trained to do this job. But there must be the will of the government to want to do things right. And to do things right, things must be on merit, not picking anybody from anywhere, just put them in place and you expect results to happen. It cannot. There are things you can do politically. There are things you must not do politically that are technical, and it's got to be on merit for it to work properly. I think we are getting the whole thing mixed up, and that's where the problem is. Not that we don't have engineers or technicians. What's in the refinery? People here in Delta will be people to Gogoro for the past thousands of years. Simple distillation system. So the refinery is what? Distillation system with all kinds of things attached to experience. It's just the leadership, the way things are being structured. That is our problem. And we must embark on merit system whereby you put a square peg in a square hole, a round peg in a round hole. That has been our problem, even within the so-called NNPC from after Aret Adams' time. It has been this type of ways of doing business without consideration to merit. If we embark on strong merit and decide to do it right, we can do it. We have the people to do it. I know that, so that's the problem. You set up committees, you set up boards. Look at the people. Are these people relevant to this business? If yes, go ahead. But in most cases, everything is politically done. Everything is not politics. There are certain things you don't mess around with. And this is one of the areas, like the petroleum industry, you don't mess with it. You've got to get people who know what they're doing and put them in place to get the result. It is doable. We can still have a sound refinery to do the job.
Thank you. Let's quickly bring in Professor Yinka Omoregbe. Prof, I'd like you to quickly look at the issue of withdrawal. We've been told that the adulterated products have been withdrawn. After withdrawal, what next? And in terms of whatever we do with it, I hope it's not going to be business as usual with respect to the environment and the health of the people.
I didn't get your last bit, the last part of your sentence. You talked about withdrawal and then...
Yes, withdrawal of the adulterated products. We've been told the products have been withdrawn. What happens to the withdrawn product? What are we going to do with it? What are we doing with it? And with regards to the environmental health and health of the people, I hope it's not going to be business as usual.
Oh, that's another big question. Definitely, they have to be disposed of in an environmentally sustainable fashion. And again, when you talk about that, you now talk about another problem, another issue that we have in Nigeria, which is that the environment is not being dealt with as it should, to put it very, very simply. So that is another thing. So safe disposal is another thing that we're talking about. And that is something, again, that the authority will have to be concerned with. But I think that is a whole thing we need to consider, because the entire environmental space also needs some sort of clear delineation of responsibility. Within the bill, responsibility for the environment vis-a-vis petroleum rests with the agencies of the bill, but some of these things are not very clear-cut.
Okay, Professor Yinka Morogbe, thank you very much there for, we want to take comments from the other two guests before we'll call it time on this segment of our program. I'll just, this is by the way, I mean, we hear of illegal refineries in the Niger Delta region, and the products that they refine get to be used somewhere anyway, and there were no complaints. So were they getting their refining process right, even though they were operating illegally, and we're having the incidents of soot pollution in rivers and others? That's one, that's, I believe, a conversation for another day. But more specifically, Engineer Audu, what could be the role of fuel cleaners in this place if your car is not heavily damaged? Let's put it that way. Fuel cleaners, yes.
Thank you. Fuel cleaners will help in removing the sludge that must have found their way into the fuel line before it enters the engine for combustion and the rest. And these days, we don't use carburetor engines anymore. They are carburetor engines, but what we use mostly now is fuel injection engines. You know, the fuel is atomized through the injectors, and it just comes to the chambers, the combustion chamber, and the spark ignition, the spark plug will ignite, and the engine functions. So if there are already bad contaminants there, the fuel cleaners will help to remove the contaminants or lighten them up and still allow them to come out with the combustion, because there will be more emissions, more materials that are emitted other than what should have been emitted in a normal functional engine.
So the emission is from your exhaust.
It's from your exhaust,
which gets into the air,
the environment,
which
contaminates the environment, which is what we breathe. So the non-oxygen emissions will be more than what we are supposed to have. Okay.
So do you recommend that?
To protect your engine, yes.
Yeah.
To protect your engine, yes. But it's not too much that will be too debilitating to the environment in this case. Now, what can also be done is to add combustion improvers that will help in improving the combustion of the fuel that you have. Like I said, the water will settle down below because it's heavier, and it will go up. So most of the times, in the present circumstances, if we can afford it, we'll keep our tanks at very high capacity filled up, so
full tanks at all times.
Across tanks. And
we don't have much time.
Yes, quickly on the refineries. He says something. What they bring out in the Niger Delta is mostly diesel. They don't get more than that, because that is one of the first products you get. The PMS come much later, after other constituents have been taken out. Okay. That is why it is fractional distillation in the production of in the refining of petroleum products. But for the simple Ogogoro that I say, it's just simple distillation. But this one is
not simple. It's not simple.
That is a chemical language.
The colonial invaders described it as illicit dry gin in those days, and then they were importing theirs from the distilleries.
Let's quickly, Mr. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to your correct name now. That's Mr. Ijagu. Quickly tell us how should people go about seeking compensation? Quickly.
Seeking compensation would be first to go to where you made your purchase, because that's the supplier of your product. So we advise that you go to the filling station where you made your purchase and then establish that, yes, even the supplier agrees with you that you actually made your purchase. And then you can make your claims. When you make your claims and the supplier or the filling station is not yielding, that is when we come in. Because ours is to provide redress in such a manner that the consumer is treated fairly.
Okay.
So we advise that you go there. And when you go in there, please go with proof of purchase so that it doesn't become an argument.
Okay. Okuku, what's your idea of how we can address this? Quickly.
Yeah. Simply, first things first, the investigation has to be supervised by the president himself, not by any other person, because, I mean, they're trying to give him a bad name, so he needs to superintend over this particular investigation. Number two, NNPC should be stopped from awarding such contracts without independent organizations like Deloitte, KPMG. They should be the ones to, make sure that they administer some of these contracts. And number three, we should make sure that these marketers or traders, international traders, we leave them and then focus on refinery owners. That's how you attract investment. Because when you now want to leave them, they will see reason why they should come and set up refineries in your country, not traders.
Ogbonna Okuku, investment and economic development expert, thank you very much for your contribution. Mr. Ondaje Ijagu, Deputy Director, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, many thanks to you as well. Let me also appreciate Professor Yinka Omorogbe, Professor of Energy Law and former Secretary and Legal Advisor, NNPC. Professor, thank you very much for joining us via Zoom. Professor Sari, yes, let me also appreciate Engineer Alex Name, MD, CEO, Gamok Nigeria Limited, and of course, honorary member of SPE with over 40 years experience in the oil and gas. Engineer Abdul Aldo, Mechanical Engineering Department, Kaduna Polytechnic. We'll appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
Yes, and we'll thank all our participants on today's program. Let's take a look at development stories and the foreign scene.
The Somali capital was hit by a deadly suicide bombing on Thursday. The provincial toll records 6 dead and at least 10 injured. Preliminary observation suggests that the presidential palace was targeted. The blast happened at a restaurant bordering the clinic and near a security checkpoint leading to the president's residence in Mogadishu. Security officials say the incident is still being investigated to know the exact details, but preliminary observations suggest that someone carried out the blast. Mogadishu has seen a spate of attacks, and in early January, the government spokesman was wounded in an attack. Meanwhile, the European Commission president announced on Thursday a more than $171 billion investment plan for Africa. The EU chief was in Dakar to meet President Macky Sall. The multi-billion-dollar investment is part of the European Union Investment Scheme for Infrastructure. The European Union Global Gateway Investment Scheme aims to mobilize investments of up to $340 billion for public and private infrastructure around the world by 2027. The scheme will draw on private sector investments as well as funding from EU institutions and member countries. The European Union chief arrived in Senegal on Wednesday to prepare for the EU-AU summit scheduled on February 17 to 18.
All right, let's get some entertainment stories now.
Agbo Christopher, an advocate of the rights of persons with disabilities in the FCT, likes to party, and he is a familiar face at entertainment functions around the FCT. However, most times he is alone and somewhat lost in thought. This time, we decided to draw him out at a pool party in Abuja, and it turned out that he had a lot on his mind pertaining to what else but his favorite subject.
Well, when I was coming, I was supposed to actually come with a lot of my friends who are also persons with disabilities, who also who love to have fun. But I was like, if I may go to the place, it may not be accessible, so I have to come alone. So I'm coming alone, and as if I guess well, it wasn't accessible. You know, because imagine if I'm here with them and they cannot even access this place. So I will feel bad. So, but I'm all alone. So, but they can make most of these places very accessible. You see a lot of persons with disabilities who want to be part and parcel of all this. We are human beings. We want to also spend our money. We want to also have fun.
As for the pool party itself, exclusive details much later.
Now, when the girls get that pool, all the bath for buckets.
Kemini Williams with E-News.
All right, and with that entertainment, we end our conversation today on Good Morning Nigeria, and indeed for the week. As usual, we would like to appreciate all of you and, you know, to invite you again to join us for another interesting edition on Monday. I am Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. Always join us in our fight against rape and rapists. Kingsley?
I'm Kingsley Osadoladu. Have a lovely weekend.